Laddering. So let's then work on what should your packaging be. So what is my first, second, and third class? Do I have modules? What about add-ons? Is there premium support? What do I sell? So I know what I can do, but what do I sell? How do I sort of wrap it into something and show it to a customer? Okay, one of the main killers of startup businesses is the illusion that if you solve a big problem or pain, you will get customers. There's lots of big problems and big pains without any big businesses attached to them. So, and the reason is that not all big problems or pains are having people trying to solve them. Like some people just live with certain issues. And so I use the concept of a job to be done as a shorthand or a term for saying a problem that is being chased by demand. And a couple of years ago, I had a day where I had 2 meetings with 2 startups, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And they were sort of polar opposites of this. So I'm just going to tell the story, and then maybe sort of the illustration can sort of help to show what I mean. The first one was young people who had identified correctly that there's a big sort of mental health issue in universities. So young people start university, they are alone, they feel isolated, they feel overwhelmed, there's a lot of responsibility that they have, so they have a lot of mental health issues. They don't have friends, and so forth. So they wanted to solve this. And they did so by creating an app that would create meaningful conversations between students. They tested it, students loved it, rated it really highly. Universities were encouraging and backing up, and they sold nothing. And they're like, oh, we charge whatever. I can't remember what the price was, but it wasn't high. It was like $5 a month. Like, should we lower it to $2? I was like, no, because the problem is real. Students do have mental health issues and they feel alone, but they solve it with Tinder and beer. Like, that's the solution that they're aiming for, right? So they're not in the market for conversation apps for some reason. They have demand for other things. They have demand for more easy social events that aren't as demanding as having a deep conversation. So there wasn't any demand that they could tap into. Fast forward after lunch, I had a meeting with a guy who had already built another business, and now he was building a new one from his own sort of case story, which was that he had a house in a suburb in Hellerup, and he wanted his windows cleaned. And then he went to Google and said, window cleaners Hellerup. And then like a list came up, and then he called the first one, didn't pick up the phone. I was like, oh, okay. He called the second one, didn't pick up the phone, and he got like agitated, called the third one, picked up the phone. And by this point, he was a little bit like, okay, I want my windows cleaned. And then the window cleaner was like, of course, when is a good time for you to be home so that I can come by and give you an offer to clean the windows? And then the guy was like, but, I can send you a picture of my house. And, it's like, no, because there can be access issues and with like the gates, and I need to get in and I need to come by. Big windows, small windows. Big windows. So he was like, okay, so how about Thursday? No, okay, how about Friday? So he did all that thing, and then the guy showed up and didn't send him a quote. So then he had to call. It's like, where's the quote? It's like, oh, I'll send it today. You know how some of these people work. Finally sends the quote. He accepts it straight away. Comes, cleans the windows, then doesn't send an invoice. And then he is like, let me pay so I can be rid of this process, right? And then at the end of it, he was like, this just has to be easier, right? So he called like 10 window cleaners in his area, said, hey, how's your business going? And how about if I send you customers and we just agree on a price per window, and we can differentiate it on like ground floor and first floor and so forth. And we charge this price, and then I take 30% and you get the rest, but you don't have any of the hassle. I just, show up. And if there's access issues, it's just on the client. And they pay like a deposit. And if there isn't access, you just drive away. Sure, they said, let's do all that. And then he created a landing page where it's just like window cleaning Hellerup, and then he bought the AdWord. And then he said, and then I own 50% of the market. That was it. And he said, it was just like the water was already running, and I just had to put my cup out and fill it. Right? So it's like that. Oh, that was easy. And then instead of having to I get the water out of the thing, right? Which is what the first guys were doing, right? They were sure there was water in there, but they couldn't get it opened, right? And the other guy he was just looking for water that was already running. I was like, oh, I'll just take some of that, please. So this is a key distinction for you, because if you're trying to get the water to run, that's just a way heavier lift than just going to where it's already running and just tapping into existing demand. So the term I use for this, I will go to the end of this, is point of first demand. So there is something likely that your customers are mostly looking for when they find you. Like, I am looking for not being in pain, so I'll go find PhysioFresh. Or I'm looking to learn French, so I'll go find the app with the flashcards. Or whatever it is, right? So there's something that is the primary source of demand, and that is usually what your first package should be. It should just be, okay, so you want that, we're now using all the features from the functional side and the service side and the commercial side, and then picking out everything we need to solve that problem and meet that demand. So if customers in commerce are coming and say, oh, we really need something to handle what's the point of first demand in your business?
It's when you have to make the same class once again.
Yeah.
That you just created all of the stuff and there's no template.
Okay.
So just recreate it.
Okay, so that's what they're looking for. They're like, oh, I need a class creation template system.
That's the core problem.
Okay. Maybe that is then so it's sort of, we have your package one is run and manage classes really easily for these kinds of guys, right? And then it's like, big template library, like easy copy paste, whatever it is that sort of, so they will read through the features and the services are like, and we'll stand by and we'll help you and we'll migrate all your old classes in so you don't have to do all the work of creating them once, even though you created them in the past. And whatever it is that solves that first one is likely your first package. Then you ask yourself the question, okay, I'm now imagining that I have this customer, they came through the door with this problem. Point of first demand. I now satisfy that demand fully. Like I give them what they want. We take a breath and then we ask, what do they now need? Like once I've already managed all of their classes and they have all their classes filled and everything is easy and they can create new classes in a second, what is now the next thing that they would want? So I'm just hallucinating, right? But maybe they want to fill the classes. Maybe they want marketing or they want something else. So, okay, so let's then say, the second thing they need to fill these classes because now they have a lot of classes, but they don't have all the students that they like. So we're going to create marketing efforts and whatever, outreach and so forth. Lead system and CRM systems essentially for these things. Maybe, right? Or maybe it's something else, I don't know. But it's the sequence of questions that you ask where you say, okay, maybe I'm in pain, I need that fixed. So I have an injury and I need to get past that. And maybe once I'm in the injury, I want to stay healthy forever or for long term, right? Something like this. Maybe I need to learn a specific language. Maybe I then need to sort of master it in a different way. Maybe I need to learn to write it. Maybe, I don't know whatever it is, right? But you get it out. Make sense?
That's a great model. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I work with Bäumer Group, this big German industrial firm. They bought Chris plant in Aarhus. And what they're doing is they're building all the machinery that handles like large logistics facilities. So the machine that sorts all the post for Deutsche Post, right? Or the thing that carries your luggage around in the airport, like the conveyor belts and brings it to the planes. And they have maybe 1,000 airport installations globally. And their data analytics department had then built a piece of software that could take the data out of the machines and then bring value to their clients, to the airports. And they had created a packaging that looked very much like this. So they walked me through this, in a workshop a couple years ago, say, well, okay, so we have the software and we're thinking of selling it this way. I've sort of paraphrased the pricing, so don't worry about that. So they said, okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the data out and then we're going to describe it to the customer. So we're going to give the customer the data. If they want more, then we can also explain the data to them, like say, oh, what is happening here is actually that you have a bottleneck in terminal 2. So that's what's happening when it reaches whatever 102% or something. So we did do that. And then we can start to analyze the data patterns and then predict what will happen. So we say, oh, you're loading a lot of luggage in terminal 2, which means that you're going to get a bottleneck downstream over here on the tarmac in 20 minutes, right? So then people can start reacting on it and say, hey, maybe we should close some of the input points for luggage so it moves a little slower so we don't have the bottleneck. And then because we have this power of simulation, we can also start to run different scenarios to say, hey, what if we opened up more or closed down more or built another terminal or expanded the system and did all the things, and we can simulate all these things and then we can find the best ones. And then that is a really helpful prescription tool, a stimulation tool for management, who then gets to sort of play around with how to engineering the entire system to create sort of an optimal solution for themselves. Great. But they couldn't sell it. So then they call me and say, why can't we sell it? Like, so when we take this to customers, they get it. Like they know what we're selling them. It's very clear. And then we just keep talking about it. The sales cycle just keeps on and they're never sort of biting. They're not buying. What's going on? And I said, well, who are you speaking to? Like, who's in the organization? And I said, well, that's maintenance and operations and management. Those are sort of the stakeholders in the airports. And I said, okay, fair enough. So what's the issue with that? And I said, well, so the issue is partly that maintenance, they want predictive maintenance because that's really sort of their use case. So they want to know when something breaks down so they can go and fix it like 5 minutes before. But they don't need to sort of run around and fix it all the time. So they just want to reduce the times they have to attend to a machine in order for it to have 100% uptime. But operations only want describe because they have their own system. So they just want the data out, essentially. While management, they actually want prescribed. They like sort of the whole simulation thing. So that means that everybody's sort of arguing about what they kind of want and we're getting nowhere. So what's happening now is, they told me, is that our sales department, they want to do this. So sales is say, okay, so we can solve this. So what we're going to do, we're just going to sell predict to maintenance, and then we're going to sell another version which is described to operations, and then we can sell prescribed to management, and then that's going to be great. And I said, okay, so this is what I call a Hydra product. This is the opposite of the monolith, which is, and it works mathematically, which is, okay, so you have 4 different solutions for maintenance, and then you have 4 different solutions for operations. That's 16 combinations. And then you have 4 different solutions for management. That's 64 combinations. And then they also had, I can't remember, a couple of add-ons. So premium support, yes, no, dedicated server, yes, no. They had different things. So we came to more than 1,000 combinations, which was more customers that they potentially had globally. I was like, okay, so maybe we shouldn't have a product structure that allows for more complexity than even exists in the market, right? Somehow that just doesn't make sense. And if you do this, the technical debt will just pile up. And because you give your sales reps so much freedom to create a solution for a specific customer, that also means that we're going to end up in the scenario where you have 600 enterprise contracts and nobody knows how to deal with them long term. So what's the point of first demand? And they say, well, the point of first demand is predictive maintenance. That's why they come through the door. Okay, how about we package like that instead? Sell them maintenance. That's what brings them to the table, right? Don't sell them anything else. And then we can create packaging like that. Say, okay, we have maintenance. That's why you're here. You can buy maintenance. And then all the features that are in there are talking about how we solve maintenance for you. Because that's why you're here. And then we don't need to talk about anything. If you want to, we can also sell you operations. And we have a lot of different functionality here that we'd love to speak to you about. But you don't have to. And of course, you can go all the way up to management if you have these kinds of needs as well.
So you took more the persona and you start building the packages based on.
It's not a persona. I don't care. The CEO still buys this. This is a demand source. This is a budget that is chasing a solution. I don't care if this is an engineer or an MBA or whoever it is. Personas don't work.
Oh God, I wish you would have said that when my co-founder was here.
Hashtag. Personas don't work.
Depends what you use them for, no?
Okay, they have use cases, but none of them are commercial. So,
And there was another problem that is personas don't buy things each equally or singly. So probably
no, so
different personas.
you're selling into, so depending on what kind of software you have, you're selling into,
Don't take it serious. It's SaaS and B2B.
you're selling to meet demands. There are specific, you can identify sources of demand. That's really helpful. And then you can say, well, where do people look to have these demands met? Like, where do they go to search? Who do they ask? That's where you market, right? That's the way you go and try to be visible and advertise yourself to meet demand sources. But we don't really care who has that demand, as long as they sort of fit in the model, then they're buying it. It's like, oh, I need maintenance for, we know we're an airport, right? So in that sense, we have a persona because we're selling it into a specific market. But apart from that, when I do my projects, they a lot of times done these sort of marketing reports and surveys, and they sell me all these persona reports, and I like skim them and throw them because they're not helpful. It's really hard to take action on it. It's good if you want to train non-senior salespeople and they sort of need to understand who they're speaking to. Then it's great. But if you have senior salespeople that knows these customers in and out, they will know exactly if I'm speaking to an engineer, or an MBA, or they're both in the room, how I will handle this. Because it's not the persona that's buying, it's the demand source. So don't sell the problem, sell the demand. It's just easier. So usually sometimes I say, you know the phrase call to action? Like you have a button that says click here or whatever, right? And what you should try and do is call the action. So you don't want to do something that gets people off the couch and say, come on, come to action. You want to have people that runs around in the fire looking for the exit and say, exit is right here. And then they run through. Like that's the kind of customer you want, right? Because there's a clear demand for an exit because the house is on fire. And then you're like here with the green sign, right? So really what you want to identify types of customers and markets where there's already running around. There's already activity. There's already money being spent. There's already people committing resources to trying to solve something. And then you bring the better mousetrap and say, hey, why not buying this to solve what you're trying to solve? And people are like, oh, great. Like, why didn't you come earlier? That's what demand is. As opposed to explaining a pain. It's like seeing how we could create value, getting people off the couch. So, what's your point of first demand? For each tier. Because if you have, not for each tier, sorry, for each fence. Because if you have fences, then they have different reasons for being here. Which is one of the power of fences, right? Is that they have different sources of demand.